Okay, this is the second part to my explication about Jane Kenyon's poem Potato. Let me pull up the poem again. Alright, so I will be going through the poem once, and I'll be stopping at each place I have a point to discuss. Okay, Potato. In haste one evening, the narrator seems to be in some sort of hurry. What could be causing this? Does this explain what later happens to the potato? Or are these questions even relevant? So, in haste one evening while making dinner, I threw away a potato that was spoiled on one end. The rest was redeemable. I believe here it's the word redeemable in the last line. Redeemable wouldn't be a word I'd use to be talking about food. I'd rather say a food that could be salvaged, so I wouldn't usually associate redeemable with food or to describe food. However, Kenyon had a specific reason as to why she chose this, and there are plenty more places in this poem where word choices are prominent, so we'll stop and discuss those as well. So before I move into the second stanza, you can tell that the lines flow into one another. Just in this first stanza, you can tell that. In other words, there's hardly any punctuation at the end of every line. It's only when a sentence has been completed is there a period. Other than that, the lines flow freely, one exception being the end of the third stanza, which we'll talk about. But just a note so you can be aware of this before I went on. Okay. In the yellow garbage pail, it's an interesting word choice here as well. Why not just say trash can or garbage pail? Seems to be outdated. However, keep in mind that this poem was written in the 20th century because her Constance poem book was published in 1993, so this could be due why these word choices are the way they are. In the yellow garbage pail, it became the consort of coffee grounds, banana skins, carrot peelings. When I looked this word up, consort, the definition was a companion used in the sense of a husband or wife. Kenyon may be trying to say that the garbage pail is a compatriot for disposable foods. It almost gave this inanimate object, the object being the garbage pail, it almost gave this object human qualities. This literary or poetic tool is called personification. So it became the consort of coffee grounds, banana skins, carrot peelings. These coffee grounds, banana skins, carrot peelings, the word choices here create a very descriptive and quite ugly, or rather revolting, however you choose to look at it, image of trash in a garbage can. The use of imagery is very prominent here. I pitched it onto the compost, where steaming scraps and leaves return like bodies over time to earth. So let's back up just 1 second. I pitched it onto the compost. I may be stretching this a bit far, but as I read these this whole stanza, mainly the first half, there's a C consonant at the beginning of a few words. Let me read the part again. It became the consort of coffee grounds, banana skins, carrot peelings. I pitched it onto the compost. This poetic device is called alliteration. Although the C words aren't placed directly next to each other, I still feel this disconnected sort of alliteration. I believe Kenyon might do this because since the C words are emphasized, it brings out the dirty or harsh tone of these rather disgusting garbage can items. The alliteration allows this filthy imagery to sink deeper into our brains. Okay, I pitched it onto the compost, where steaming scraps and leaves return like bodies over time to earth. This is my favorite couple of lines in the poem because it had me confused for a good bit of time. First off, why choose the word leaves? We don't usually find leaves in a household garbage can, so I believe there's another reason as to why she chose this word. So I was thinking she put it in there to perhaps link in the aspect of nature. This could potentially be an underlying theme for the whole poem. As for the very last line, return like bodies over time to earth, this creates a rather darker and somber tone. This almost comes to us as a surprise, or at least it did for me. Did we expect Kenyon to take this dark turn before reading this line? Just another thought to put out there. And I'm moving on. When I flipped the fetid layers with a hay fork to air the pile, the potato turned up unfailingly, as if to revile me. So the word choices here are placed very carefully, I believe. The word fetid, I had to look up, means smelling extremely unpleasant. Here I admire Kenyon's word choices not just in this stanza, but throughout the whole poem, because she doesn't choose words like smelly or stinky or trash, words that seem straightforward or rather colloquial. She chooses words like fetid and unfailingly and revile. I think her word choices add another dimension to this poem. I believe I've mentioned Kenyon's word choices a lot in this explication, but I do believe it's very important to point out the specifics because it's what makes her poem very impacting. With that said, another interesting point in the stanza is the punctuation of the last line, unfailingly as if to revile me. I believe this is called a caesura, or caesura, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, a pause or break, because Kenyon here has paused before moving on to a different stanza. I believe she wants the reader to feel the lasting effects of the word revile, meaning to mock. By inserting this pause, it almost gives us a bit of suspension before moving on to the next line and stanza. Moving on. Looking plumper, firmer, resurrected instead of disassembling. These words are words that create a very good visual for the audience. Kenyon paints a very vivid picture of a potato that has basically come back new and improved. So in other words, her use of imagery, another poetic device, helps the audience approach the poem from a different dimension as well. It seemed to grow until it might have made shepherd's pie for a whole hamlet. People passed the day dropping trees, pumping gas, pinning hand-me-down baby clothes on the line. So this last stanza really gets at the depths of this poem. It's here that my thesis really ties into the whole thing. I'd like to read Anne Ruderman's quote again. Quote, "One of the most addictive things about Kenyon's poem is that they are never quite as simple as they seem," unquote. The whole poem has been talking about a potato that has been thrown away. This last stanza shifts the poem to a more broader view, taking our focus out of this small vegetable. Kenyon speaks about a shepherd's pie. This potato that the narrator threw away could potentially have made a pie that could have fed a number of people. As for the line, dropping trees, I associate this with deforestation. She's taking this poem again to another level. Just like some foods, trees are a finite resource. And with deforestation, we are simply cutting down trees that help our planet breathe and survive. The very last idea, well, I forgot to mention pumping gas, but seems to be straightforward. Gasoline, natural resources. Anyway, the very last idea, pinning hand-me-down baby clothes on the line, puzzled me. If hand-me-down baby clothes are being used, then we are reusing our resources rather than throwing away clothes we don't need. So instead of other people using them to suit their needs. Instead, other people are using them to suit their needs. Okay. So this last line contrasts the three previous ideas of shepherd's pie, dropping trees, and pumping gas. All these things are necessary needs, such as food, gasoline, and trees, things that won't be so plentiful in the future. So this is why the last line gave me some trouble. If the clothes that are being pinned on the line are hand-me-downs, then these people are reusing clothes rather than throwing them out. Just to reiterate that point. This contrasts the other previous ideas in a very evident way, I've said, in my opinion, I believe Kenyon does this to shed a more positive light on this topic. The fact that she ends with this contrasting statement brightens the mood. When I sat with this line for a few minutes, it struck me that if they are pinning clothes on the line, then they are not using the energy that someone would when using a washer and dryer to clean their clothes. So this act is very, very opposite to the previous three ideas. So that concluded my explication for potato as I read through it, but some afterthoughts before I move into the conclusion. So as for the speaker here does not have a name. We can simply call him or her the narrator. The narrator is talking in first person or in the I form. For example, when I flip the fetid layers. So that's for the speaker. And in terms of the sense of audience, I believe this poem isn't specific to one kind of audience in terms of age. So younger and older people could very well understand this poem. The focus of this poem is to convey the idea of a reusable based lifestyle. So this poem could be targeting those people that may not be conscious or aware that they could make other use of the food that they would normally throw out. So that in that sense of audience. In terms of meter, I can't put a specific name to the kind of meter, but I'll read a few lines and stress the syllables I believe to be stressed. I will read the first stanza. In haste one evening while making dinner, I threw away a potato that was spoiled on one end. The rest was redeemable. This is what I believe the stressed words to be. I apologize that I can't put a name to it, but that's for the meter. So I'm going to move on into my conclusion. I'm basically here reiterating my thesis I talked about in my other video, my explication number 1. But this is what I believe the poem to be. This argument should resonate with a lot of people because we need to think of our resources more consciously. We live in a day and age where we can see into the future and see a world that has run out of its natural resources. I know I've stretched this a bit far from talking about a potato, but I believe this is truly what Kenyon is getting at. She broadens her picture at the end of the poem in the last stanza, where she talks about feeding more people and the topic of deforestation. This poem and my argument matters and should matter because we set the tone for generations and generations to come. We should make the most of what we have, or rather, don't take more than we need. So that finally concludes my poetry explication of Potato by Jane Kenyon. Thank you.